Hello everyone, Jarretman here, back with some more 500 Zoom. Another midday for me, reg heavy two-tabling session. Sensing a pattern here. My name is Carl in the pool. Don't get to play much with him, which is good for me. 8-4-3 with the flush draw. It's close. The queen nine off will call versus 2.5 always. It's close between ace king being able to kind of bet for pseudo value on the flop, if you want to call it anything, protection value. And then I think we want to have the ace king that has the diamonds and the spades more so when we do bet. Also, this is a candidate board to consider having a lot of checks. On the turn, you could have some overbets, but I think that he turns king 3, king 4, king 8 a decent amount. And when we overbet, it's too easy for him to play most of his range. So I do like to go for the normal bet there, even if overbet is chosen a decent amount. Table 2, we're not doing much hand raising with this hand class. And even on 92, I think I'm still going to just call on the flop. Ace 3 off is like bottom, not even an open from the button. But the big blind was a little bit tighter, so can't be too bad. Table 2 is a card that he should have some rather large overbets on. We don't improve too many hands on that card. Could definitely bet small on table 2. Check call is also an option, but I kind of like bet small when I have a good kicker with my 9. Also when the river's an 8, now he rivers some 8x. Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay. Wouldn't hate a raise by him on the river there. Okay. It's a little thin when you have basically the king X with the worst kicker. But yeah, I wouldn't hate it. Versus my block range, I have a lot of 9x. I have some 8x, like some stronger 8x. And I will have some king X and some traps, but either way, his hand is really close. This one's close, being 200 big blinds deep, but with the rake, we just, yeah, we get punished by the rake too hard. Check 8 suited is a decently high frequency 3-bet from the big blind. You could even 3-bet it pure. I've seen some charts that 3-bet it pure. I've seen some that call it sometimes. King 8 off, even though we're getting a really good price here on our money. Because of factors like the rake and its poor playability 3 ways, this I think becomes a fold here, where some hands that play a bit better multi-way, I can't pull up the hand yet because they're still playing it, but some hands that play better multi-way get shifted into the calling range. But overall, once the button flats, our big blind calling range goes down, actually. Our calling percentage, rather, goes down. Yeah, we can 4-bet, we can call here with the ace-4 suited. I don't mind either. I rolled a high number, so we'll go for the 4-bet. Table 2, I'm not going to range bet this board, although, you know, for the videos and everything, I don't mind range betting this board. But with the 2 low interaction cards and the flush draw, we just have some hands that really benefit from checking back, and that's one of the benefits of playing in position is we get to, most of the time, decide when to check back, because most boards, the big blind can't lead. The ace-5 suited out of position, I'm not going to cold 4-bet it. I will cold 4-bet it sometimes in position. But anyways, all that said, I have a pretty strong hand. 7-4 suited is kind of the very, very bottom of a hand I'd be even consider opening. I think when the 2 pairs, I just want to go for normal bets. You will see some like very, very large overbets occasionally get chosen if you put this in to a computer, but I like just having, if I can just have one size, I like just having one size. On 94, we'll bet with the ace-king here. With this combo, we'll fold to a very large raise, to a very small raise. We'd call with the ace-king there. On the river now, even though we beat king 5, king 4, king 3, we lose to king 9, king 10, king jack, which can all play this way. King queen would mostly raise at some point, but anyways, it's too thin to bet. Yeah, we lose to king 10. And definitely not weak enough to ever consider bluffing on that river. On the turn, you can definitely consider it checking it back sometime, but I rolled a high number. One of the benefits to using the normal size is you get to bet more of a diverse range. You don't have to, you know, throw in just when you have king jack or better. We could 3-bet the king 8 off. We can call it. My range is I'm not really 3-betting the king 8 off. King 7 off, king 6 off. I will 3-bet some of the time. Versus half pot, we don't need to float with this type of hand. In those middling boards in general, we have a lot of hands that connect with the board, so we don't have to get as creative. Queen 9 suited not strong enough to 3-bet in those positions. If you're playing flats in the small blind, 9-8 suited is a reasonable flat, I suppose, but you don't see it being used as a 3-bet very often because of its reversedness versus ace-king on the straightening boards, and also the fact that you have coverage across the 9-8 region already with other parts of your range. So you benefit from having a little bit of coverage with like 6-7 and 5-4, but the coverage you gain from playing 9-8 suited isn't as important. And you just don't see a lot of those in your range to begin with when you're playing the linear 3-bet or fold strategy. Because it's not really important at 100 big blinds to have these suited connectors in your range. At 100 big blinds, you just kind of want to flop top pair and get it in. So table 2 is really interesting, cutoff versus button. You're in a really bad spot on most boards. This board, you're not in as bad of a spot. I'm going to start with a check with ace-5 no backdoor here. Definitely splitting on this board. I'm not going to throw in a range bet. I'll be playing small better check. I would rather range check than range bet on this board versus button when I open the cutoff. Now on the turn, I definitely think overbets make sense. He doesn't have 3-4. He's definitely more capped than we are. We already had a range of symmetry advantage in the aces and tens region pre-flop to begin with. The disadvantage comes from the fact that our range is much wider than his. He flats something like 5 to 7% depending on his ranges pre-flop, and we open, you know, somewhere between 22 and 27%, something like that. So after we overbet the turn and there was an available flush draw, I do like using this as a check call. Having the 5, while it doesn't improve my hand value, it is a decent blocker and unblocker, as in maybe he calls the turn with a hand like 5-6 of clubs and then doesn't bluff the river, or 5-6 of hearts rather. Jack 5 suited is kind of close versus middle position. Again with the rake, I think it gets mostly folded. He can have some 10x for sure. I don't have many 10x. I think this river we're going to be checking a decent amount. But he also has lots of bluff candidates. And I don't think we want to fold ace-5. We can definitely fold some ace-x. Again, the small benefit of blocking pocket 5s and also unblocking his bluffs, because I don't think he's ever going to turn a 5 into a bluff, and I don't think he has those very often. His bluffs come from the diamond region and I guess floating region, but he doesn't have many floats versus the overbet. I think we just have to call this. You could argue this spot's under bluffed. I could get behind that, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to call. Yep. Six four off, again, not quite strong enough. The absolute borderline, I guess you could say. Using this as a bluff raise is also an option here, but I don't think we need to use this as a bluff raise. I'd rather use a 5 blocker that doesn't have the ace to go with it, because I don't think the ace is really a relevant blocker here. So versus the 8 big blind 3-bet, our range becomes significantly wider in the small blind versus big blind 3-bet spot here. So just something to keep in mind across some later streets, but it won't have drastic implications, but it is a small difference. Protection raising this board isn't as much of a thing. You will do it sometimes. It's built around really the fact that you do have queen 8 suited and pocket 8s that kind of want to raise the flop. And then, yeah, you have some hands that you just need to mix in there. This hand, I guess, could do it without the backdoor flush draws, but I think I'm just going to call. When you don't block the backdoor flush draws and you raise small, it's more likely he has like a worse hand that can float you. But here, with all of its connectivity, most of his backdoor hands, even blind v blind, have straight draw. Overall, that's an okay card for our range on table 1, but I wouldn't say it's a good card. Queen 10 is really close versus 2.2, but I think cutoff button specifically will call the queen 10 off here, even though it doesn't play well multi-way. I think ranges are wide enough that when we hit a queen or 10 in these spots that it's strong enough to just call down. So table 1, our destiny looks like calling turn, folding some rivers, which is not a fun spot, I would say. This is probably our worst ace-x, actually. But I don't think we fold any ace-x on the turn. I'm just going to muck it. I'll let him have it. Nice hand. Let him gain a couple points of EV there. Pretty sure we'd never fold an ace on the turn. If we did fold an ace, it would be this hand, though. Every other ace is better. Having spades isn't good because he's more likely to barrel spades after we check call small on the flop because it unblocks our backdoors. Having the 7 is bad because when we hit our 7, he improves to some higher 2 pairs more often than... Sorry, when we hit our 7, it's not like we improve to that strong of a hand because there's higher 2 pairs available already. And a lot of other ace-x like ace-9, ace-10 have a straight draw, and the lower ones at least unblock more of his bluffs. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this is not a fold. Maybe I'll change the title to Getting Exploited on Stream by Big Blind Bets. If you know a player has 4-bet jams there, and you know most of their 4-bet jamming range is built around ace-king, it'll mix like some kings in there. Aces never wants the 4-bet jam. So if you know that, when you face the normal 4-bet, if they have both, then you can probably discount a decent amount of their ace-king combos, which is why a lot of people choose not to play 4-bet jams and just play one 4-bet size. Myself included. So you can just kind of make a mental note of that. This hand seems like a pretty decent raise on the flop versus a reasonable size bet. Even versus a large bet, it seems like a reasonable raise. We have a backdoor straight draw. We need tons of protection. We need more protection than like any other 8. And we double unblock the backdoors. So again, he can have more of these backdoor hands that are betting the flop and we need protection against. When he bets big and we raise, it's less of a thing that he's going to peel these backdoor hands. I still don't mind raising. It's less of a thing here. Like, it's always the balance of, do you want the backdoor flush draw yourself just because it has extra value, or do you want to unblock him having it? It's more important to unblock him having it and when the SPR is lower. When it's larger, it's more important to have the backdoor. Decent hand to check back some of the time on table 1 on a low number. Seems fine to me. I'd rather check back a hand like Jack 10 than 10-8. But I think most 10s get mixed back, at least at some low frequency. Bad spot here, but we can't fold yet. I don't think we get to fold any 10s yet. I'd say that's a good card for our range. For our hand, it's kind of whatever. He can have some 4x of hearts, and he can have some 4x bluffs. I guess like exactly queen 4, or maybe 5-4 if he's getting a little bit out of line, but I wouldn't mind just turning a 4 into a bluff here. So he does improve on some hands. And then for value, the problem with calling down this hand is we really block his bluffs when we have the 8 here. And I just have better hands to call him down with. I'd even rather have a king because the bottom of his value is probably king 10. So while the 10 does block value and unblock bluffs, the 9 I think is not very good to call him down here. It's not like he can't have bluffs, but if we have lots of hands to bluff catch him with here, we don't want to be calling him down all the time because then he can just stop bluffing us. We want to be calling him down, some of the time. Ace queen suited on 36 big blinds. We're just going to 3-bet get it in. Pretty happily, actually. This is interesting now. So I'm never getting a I'm never getting a pair to fold. I think I just want to win the most when he does have some type of spaz. This isn't really a spaz size. This is more of like I have pocket 7s bet. But he could just be stabbing sometimes, and my hand is just too strong to ever consider folding. We're at a position, there's very little stack depth remaining. I don't think I have any fold equity. I think my hand's just strong enough to get it in, because when we are behind, we have 2 overs at least. I think check folding the flop is just too nitty. Anyways, back to this hand with the 10-8. We need to fold some pairs. We don't call down every time we have a 10 or a 9, so we might as well choose the ones that have the best blockers. You can play a betting range on table 1. You can play a range checking strategy. I think both are pretty reasonable. Our hand will get into the 3-betting category as well. Some of the time. I think on 24, we're just going to muck it, though. It's close between being able to float, actually. Being able to peel one, actually, versus that size. It's really close. King 5 suited, because we're playing the polar call or 3-bet strategy, it gets mixed into the 3-betting range. some of the time, button versus cutoff. Not all the time. A nice little bonus here, even though we did get cold 4-bet, is that being 200-ish effective with the big blind, it's less attractive for him to cold 4-bet us, as he's going to get called more often. Less attractive for him to cold 4-bet us with, I guess you could call them the bluff portion. Like if he's sitting there with ace queen off, it's not an attractive cold 4-bet spot where 100 big blinds deep, I think he just gets it in there pure. But that's such a small consideration because that happens so infrequently compared to the blinds just folding and you having to play a pot with the cutoff. Very, very small influence on the spot, I would say. Would be my guess anyways. Five three suited is, again, one of those bottom hands where you could open it, you could fold it. For those hands, you could, all these borderline decisions pre-flop, you can base them on the player. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to do. So here we're going to cold 4-bet the ace-jack suited. Unknown player makes a very small 3-bet size here. I don't want to go too small because of the really small 3-bet size. I want to still go to a size I would go with, aces, kings, and I don't want to go too small with aces and kings here. We get jammed on, we'll fold. If he mins us, we'll call. If he does anything in between, we're in a weird spot. So table one, we roll a 99, and I think eights with the 8 of hearts is definitely a candidate to check some of the time. But on this number, we're going to throw in the bet. Just going to play half pot or check. You can play 1/3 or check. That seems pretty reasonable as well. It's not so much that we're worried about his 7x range when we're only 100 big blinds deep because our overpairs are still strong enough to just stack off. But the board is dynamic with a flush draw available, with a straight draw available. Straight draw, which we don't have, not to mention we don't have really any 7x unless we found the low frequency 6-7 suited, 7-8 suited, or ace-7 suited. So you have to be a little bit careful. So we're playing against a range of 9s through 2s on table one. This is interesting now, actually. I think I do still want a flatting range in this spot. Queen jack suited is getting a little dicey. Okay. I don't have a perfect solution for this spot on table one. I could even 4-bet it here. Like, I don't mind even playing 4-bet or fold. Versus the big bet, we'll just let it go. On table two. And this is... It's not great versus any size bet with the player left to act behind me. On the flush draw board too, where we lose one of our gut shots to the nuts. Not to mention the king is often a card that his hand will contain, so it's less likely that he has a king. Less likely that a king will come on the turn. But when it does, he does connect with it, which is a good benefit here. But I think we just can't continue, which is one of the reasons why calling a hand like queen jack suited there, not the best. So that hand's still going on, so that means that sanctity... No, okay, he did fold. We'll call versus the 4-bet here. It is a large 4-bet, but we are deeper. Our hand is probably indifferent at that size. It's pretty close, I would say, button versus hijack. Not as loose of a range as we are, cut off or in the blinds. This one we can peel our gut shot. So he should technically have less ace queen, because we're deeper, but whether that happens, I don't know. My range should technically be a bit stronger. That contains a bit more ace-king. His range potentially contains less ace-king, again, because we're deeper. He will still, I think, pure queens at this stack depth. Pure 4-bet queens. We block kings and jacks and ace-king, so we're kind of weighting him more towards aces and queens, unfortunately, with our hand. Kind of in a weird spot now. We're in a really weird spot deep in position with the gut shot here versus the small bet. I honestly have no idea what to do. I think it's a fold. On 51, we'll call with the king 10 suited. It's close versus his size. His size is a little bit larger than what people normally do, but I think it's still a call on 51. Looking for a good flop here. That's a good flop. For my hand, for my range, it is not a good flop. So I don't mind doing anything here on table 1. So table 1, we do have a raising range, and it's built around our ace-queen that just wants to raise for protection. And then this hand class, I think, just wants to mostly call, though. Call and bank the offsuit queen. That's a pretty good result. I think we'll call again when we have king 10 with the diamonds here. I'm assuming he's going to bet small and not jam. Yaroslav's a good player. Yeah. Picks the good line. Yeah, I was saying that jamming would be the not good line here. And yeah, again, with the diamonds, we'll call. We don't want to see the river pair, but there's enough value from his random bluffs. Table 2 might be close. I kind of wasn't paying attention. There's enough value from his random bluffs like king 6 of spades, hands like that. I could donk this river, but I really don't know the spot to donk the river. It's not even like we have a 10x advantage in the spot, to be honest. We don't really peel like 10s on the turn. Even 10s on the flop starts folding unless it has a diamond. Ace 10 suited, I guess, would be like the only hand, or these types of hands, like king 10 suited, ace 10 suited. My range is still mostly like some ace queen, some suited connector, flush draws that had the right price to call, some ace jack that was trapping. Yeah, that's a bit unfortunate, actually. He had ace 2, okay. He was considering bluffing the ace 2 on the river. If I jam the turn, I think his hand is a pretty clear fold. Again, table 2, this is the spot where we have the caller in position left to act behind us in this spot. Not an attractive spot to call, because when you call, he mostly goes overcall, and when he goes overcall, he has higher pairs than you. Ace 9 suited can call or 3-bet. In general, when we're on the button versus the cutoff, we do a lot more 3-betting than we do calling, because we can get squeezed from the blinds pretty often. In 3-bet pots, I don't really range bet unless the board dictates that you can range bet, and I think this board dictates you can range bet pretty safely. Pretty good board for the button. In table 1, I think we just fold 10s. When we do hit a 10, he has ace queen, and we just get stacked. Yes, we're ahead of a decent portion of his range, especially like the ace 4 suited region, but we just don't realize very well. Our destiny is to check call the flop, check fold every turn when we have 10s here. If the turn is a queen and we check and he bets, it's not even like we're that happy to continue. I'd rather call a hand like 6s than 10s, because at least when you hit your 6, you have an extremely strong hand. But I think all that junk is just folding on this board. You just gotta overfold a lot on this board. The range of symmetries pre-flop mean that he has a huge advantage on this board, and we don't have to defend a lot. We just say, hey, yeah, you know what? Sometimes you're going to flop better flops than we are. Sometimes the board is going to be 7, 8, 9, and we can even lead because that board is so good for the caller. But sometimes the board's really good for the 3-better. Would have been an interesting decision for Yurosov to bluff that ace-2 suited on the river. I understand why he was tanking with it. I don't think he has any showdown value when the board runs out like that, except versus the low percentage of suited connectors I have in my range. Specifically, obviously, diamond suited connectors. I think he just wants to use... Maybe that is the portion of his range that he wants to use some of the time. I don't know. I feel like I would end up using like my king 5 suited, king 6 suited type hands as my bluffs on the river, and because you're only betting half pot, you don't really need that many bluffs. And I'm not even sure how thin you can go for value. Like, can you bet ace king on that river? Maybe I should pull up the hand while I'm talking about it. Like, if you're in his shoes and you have ace king, are you comfortable value betting the river? I think you are. In which case, maybe you do need some bluffs like ace 2 suited, because you have a lot more ace king than you do sets. This is really close with ace 4 suited versus the like lower than 3x 3-bet size here. But I think I'm just going to pitch it with these positions. Pretty good board for our range here. We flop some straights. That small blind potentially doesn't have 6-3 suited, depending on his range pre-flop, I suppose. And our hand doesn't, obviously, you know, checking and seeing a turn is nice if we hit a 3, but otherwise I think that our hand wants to mainly bet this flop. And I think we have a fold on table 2, pretty comfortable fold. So on this board, I think I'm not going to play over better check. I definitely want some normal bets, and if I had to pick a one-size strategy, I would rather go normal better check than over better check here, because after he check calls versus half pot, he still has a ton of ace-x. Real people might even have just all their ace-x. And yeah, I think there's a lot of value / protection rather than just repping a super polar range on the turn, even though you do have hand classes that clearly want to overbet, and splitting would be the best here, I feel. I think with my blockers with the 8-7 off, I think it wants to go into the normal bet range. I say normal bet, and I mean 75%, usually like 66, 75, because coming from a live poker background, that was like the normal bet for every betting action ever. This is close with the ace-9 suited, actually. I'm pretty sure my charts have this as a fold versus an 11 big blind 3-bet. It's really close under the gun there. And that sucks. This is the top of our 4-bet folding range in that spot. You can't really profitably call ace queen there. He has too much ace king. and not enough pocket jacks. I don't think he really profitably can jam pocket jacks there, so you just end up versus a range of queens plus ace king, and ace queen suited isn't doing that great. Gonna start with a check on table 1. Have some showdown value with our king high versus a player who doesn't like folding too much. Just gonna check, throw it in the muck. Oops. Wouldn't be a video unless I misclicked. I thought that was 3-4 off. I didn't see it was pocket threes. Oh well. Let's see if we would have flopped the 3. Oh, the hand's still going. Uh-oh. If someone opened from one of the earlier positions, I think my number there was lower, so we would have folded anyways. I will play some checkbacks here on table 1 and on a 60 and this hand class, which is a pretty high frequency bet to begin with. We're definitely going to bet. The turn is kind of bad for the button, as the big blind has 5-3 suited, which again I'm not opening from the button. But 5-8 suited and 5-3 suited are both relatively high frequency raises for him, and having the queen of hearts is kind of nice. So on 42, I'm going to bet this on the turn. We're going to blast off on heart rivers and potentially a few other ones. However, on the river, our heart blocker is no longer good. After we bet 1/3 on the flop, he can definitely have a hand like queen 9 of hearts and check call sometimes, or a hand like even queen 5 of hearts wouldn't be that unreasonable. Although I think that one would rather check raise than check call. My point is I'm blocking some of the folding range when I have the queen of hearts, and now I think it's too thin to bet the river. I think when we bet the river, we're just getting called by a jack. That is, of course, the benefit of being in position and barreling with really any hand, is that most of your hands will have some equity, especially in these wide range spots. King 9 off, I wouldn't mind throwing into the check raise some of the time. And versus half pot, we're in a pretty tough spot. I think we have to float versus half pot here with the king of spades and 9 of diamonds. We have some future blockers. We have king high, which is reasonable. That's a bad card for our exact hand, as some of his just random air that we were ahead of was the queen high region, and now, of course, queen high has a queen. Now we have to fold. Table 1's a good board to split your range. You have a lot of different hands that want to bet different sizes on this board. As long as you do a lot of betting on this board, you can't really go wrong. If not, just betting your range, though. So on full rainbow versus the check call in a range asymmetry advantage spot to begin with, we got to do a lot of big overbetting. I don't really care that I rolled an 8. I think that different king queen, I'm going to check back the turn. Not to mention we have some other hands that have coverage on an ace, but there is enough stack depth remaining that we want to have king queen some frequency when we check back the turn. It's just a very low frequency. I think on 8, my combo probably would check back. It's just something to keep in mind. You don't want to be betting 100% of your king queen here, because if you do that, river ace, it doesn't matter as much in the 2x overbet line on the turn because he doesn't have much playability to begin with. But sorry, when you check back, that's the line that it matters that you don't have king queen in it. On a 10, I'm just gonna muck the ace queen off here. I'm gonna use this as a 4-better fold, and yeah, just chucking it in the muck. Mostly 4-betting it, folding it low frequency. I think we can get away with a range bet on table 1. Definitely not a good hand class to be betting this flop with. We can blast off some of the time. So yeah, anyways, with the king queen, if you never check back king queen on the turn and the turn goes check check and the river is an ace, because there's still, 10x pot remaining, your opponent could leverage that and potentially even start jamming. If it was the 6 offsuit, I think I'm going to barrel this hand for sure. On the 6 diamond, I'm just more inclined to give up. I don't think my 6 has any showdown value whatsoever. That's not why I decided to check back the turn. And bluffing that river with the pair blocker, I think, is... Not that the 6 is a relevant pair blocker. I think I just want to have a higher cards to bluff raise the river in that spot. I think our lowish region just mucks it. Maybe a hand like ace queen. Maybe a hand like queen jack. Queen jack of spades might be a decent raise on the river in that spot. Versus 2.2 and in the hijack, jack 10 off, we'll still actually fold sometimes. Doesn't play very well versus the hijacker under the gun range. Interesting spot on the turn here. Interesting turn check back from him. Flop check back rather. I'm gonna check the turn. It really depends a lot on how he's constructing his flop check back. There shouldn't be too many flop check backs in this spot. It's not like I flop jack 9 off or 10-8 off. I'm even folding queen 10 off and queen 8 off. Queen 10 off some of the time, queen 8 off pure I'm folding. On the river, I think we now have a pretty clear value bet. I don't think the range that checks the flop back and then checks the turn back contains many river bluff candidates. I think it contains a lot of medium weak showdown value hands like ace high or lower pairs than the board. Yeah, or a hand like king 8, I guess that's pretty reasonable. I think this board's big enough that we can just start with a half pot bet with range. Sorry, not big enough, good enough for me. Three better call here with the ace 3 off. Mostly call, sometimes 3-bet. And I think I'm going to wrap this video up here. The pool seems to be even dying out more so than when I started. Although we just got a full table here. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to wrap this up though. Let's play one more hand, one more flop at least, and we'll call this one a video. King 2 suited is just below the threshold of hands I'm willing to open from the cutoff. All right, this might be an interesting one. It is an interesting one versus the check. A lot of options on this board. Another board you could split. I think on ace-high boards in general, we mainly just want to go for a larger bet or check. Don't want to be going for anything crazy like pot or overbet or anything like that. We'll be checking back this board a lot, so when we do bet, we have the benefit of betting with more of a stronger range, I guess you could say. This is an interesting turn. He will check call some flush draws on this board. And he will check call some middling pairs that have clubs. It's not like there's not value to get. I'm just thinking of how frequently do I want to trap this on the turn. And I think I would much rather trap ace-6 than ace-5, just as a small consideration there. But yeah, that's it for this video. See you in the next one.